brother never creates these problems." My mother's words hit harder than the pain from the stitches across my abdomen. I stared at her from my hospital bed, still groggy from emergency surgery, while my 2-month-old son slept peacefully in the bassinet beside me. The surgeon had spent the last hour explaining that I couldn't lift anything heavier than a few pounds for several weeks. Even picking up my own baby could reopen the incision. "I just need someone to watch him until I'm discharged," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Please." My father checked his watch instead of looking at me. "We're leaving in an hour," he said flatly. "Your brother's ski trip has been planned for months." I blinked, certain I'd misunderstood. "You're leaving." My mother folded her arms. "You're 33, Clarice. Figure something out. Emergencies happen. That's life." A nurse paused in the doorway, sensing the tension but saying nothing. I looked from one parent to the other, waiting for someone to laugh and admit this was a terrible joke. No one did. "We can't miss this trip," my father added. "Your brother already paid for the cabin." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "For one day, you can't help me for one day." My mother sighed, as if I were asking for something unreasonable. "Stop making everything so dramatic." Then they turned and walked out of my hospital room, leaving me alone with my newborn son. I had spent 10 years making sure they never had to face a financial emergency. And the one time I needed them, they chose a ski vacation instead. As the door closed, I forced myself to think instead of panic. The nurse stepped inside carefully. "Do you have anyone else who can help?" I shook my head. "My grandmother is out of town," I said. "My friends all work during the day." The nurse nodded sympathetically. "We can give you some local caregiver resources." That single sentence became my lifeline. Within 30 minutes, I was interviewing emergency newborn caregivers from my hospital bed while signing discharge paperwork with my free hand. Every option cost far more than I had planned, but I didn't have another choice. My son needed someone safe, and I physically couldn't care for him until I recovered. After confirming an experienced caregiver could start immediately, I opened my banking app to move money into my checking account. That's when I saw it. A scheduled transfer. $3,800. Tomorrow morning, just like every month for the past 10 years. My parents. For years, I had never questioned it. They had told me retirement had become impossible, that bills kept piling up, that they were barely staying afloat. Every month I paid without complaint because they were my parents. Now, sitting alone in a hospital bed after they had refused to watch their own grandson for even a single day, I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the screen. Then I pressed *cancel automatic payment ***. The banking app asked for confirmation. I didn't hesitate the second time. Payment canceled. Curious, I opened my transaction history. Month after month. Year after year. The total climbed higher than I had ever bothered calculating before. When the final number appeared on the screen, I stared at it in disbelief. More than **450, 000**. Nearly $500,000. I had spent a decade believing I was protecting my parents from hardship. Now I was paying a stranger to care for my baby, because the people I'd supported for 10 years wouldn't help me through one medical emergency. A soft knock came at the hospital door. I looked up. An elderly woman stepped inside carrying a worn leather folder tucked tightly beneath her arm. My grandmother. She took one look at my face, then at the sleeping baby beside me. Without saying hello, she quietly closed the door behind her. Grandma set the worn folder on the small table beside my hospital bed before leaning down to hug me as gently as she could. "I came as soon as I heard," she whispered. The caregiver I had hired was rocking my son near the window, speaking softly to him while he drifted back to sleep. Grandma watched them for a long moment. "A stranger is here taking care of my great-grandson," she said quietly, but his own grandparents walked away. I lowered my eyes, There was nothing I could say. She pulled a chair close and sat beside me. "When did all of this start?" she asked. "I called Mom and Dad right after the surgeon left. They said they couldn't miss Ethan's ski trip." Grandma closed her eyes for a brief second. "They actually said that." I nodded. "They told me he never creates these problems." Silence settled over the room before Grandma reached over and squeezed my hand. "You've spent too many years believing you had to earn their love." Her words brought back memories I usually tried to ignore. The first promotion I'd celebrated alone because my parents claimed they couldn't afford the trip to visit me. The vacations I'd skipped because they needed help with unexpected expenses. The evenings I'd worked overtime without complaint because another monthly transfer was due. Every sacrifice had felt worthwhile if it kept them comfortable. "They told me retirement wasn't possible," I said. "I thought helping them was the right thing to do." "You believed what they wanted you to believe," Grandma replied carefully. She glanced toward the caregiver, then back at me. "Are you still sending them money?" I shook my head. "I canceled it today." Instead of looking shocked, Grandma slowly exhaled, almost as if she had been waiting years to hear those words. "Thank goodness." I frowned. "You expected this." "I've hoped for it," she admitted, "but hope isn't proof." She rested her hand on the weathered leather folder she had carried into the room. "I wanted to tell you something a long time ago, Clarice. I couldn't do it without evidence." My pulse quickened. "What evidence?" She gave a small shake of her head. "Not yet. You need to recover before you confront your parents." I stared at the folder. "What is in there?" Grandma met my eyes with heartbreaking certainty. "There is something you deserve to see before you speak to your parents again." She slid the folder a few inches closer across the table. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Your money wasn't going where they told you it was." My phone began vibrating before I could even reach for the folder. "Mom." Then Dad. Then Mom again. Grandma glanced at the screen. "Answer it." I took a slow breath and put the call on speaker. My father's voice exploded through the room before I could say hello. "What did you do?" "I canceled the transfer," I answered. "You can't just cut us off," my mother snapped. "After everything we've sacrificed for you." I looked at Grandma, who gave me a small nod to stay calm. "I've been in the hospital for hours," I said. "You left because of Ethan's ski trip." "Don't twist this," Dad replied. "We're the ones struggling. We've depended on that money for years." Grandma leaned toward the phone. "Then perhaps you can explain something." The line went quiet. "If you're barely making ends meet," Grandma continued evenly, "how did you afford 2 ski vacations last winter?" Neither of my parents answered immediately. Mom finally spoke. "That's none of your business." "It became everyone's business when Clarice paid your bills for 10 years, Grandma replied. Dad quickly interrupted. "We're not discussing finances." Before anyone could say another word, my phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications. A family group chat. Mom had already posted. "Clarice has decided to abandon her elderly parents right after having a baby. We don't know what we've done to deserve this." Replies started appearing one after another. An aunt asked if everything was all right. A cousin said she was shocked. Another relative wrote that family should always come first. I felt every message tightening around me until Grandma quietly reached for her own tablet. "May I?" I nodded. She uploaded a single document into the chat. 1 year's worth of bank transfers. Every month. Exactly $3,800. The room fell silent as relatives began reading. Then another message appeared from my uncle. If they needed this much help, how were they posting photos from resorts every few months? Another cousin added screenshots of vacations my parents had proudly shared online. The tone of the conversation changed almost instantly. Questions replaced sympathy. My father's breathing became audible over the speaker. Without answering a single one of them, he ended the call. The room was suddenly quiet. Grandma looked at me, then reached down beside her chair. She lifted a thick stack of bank statements, crossed the room, and laid them carefully across my hospital tray. "This," she said, "is where the real story begins." I looked down at the final document. It wasn't another bank statement. It was a handwritten timeline Grandma had created over the years, with copies of receipts and notes attached beside each date. "I started keeping this after your grandfather passed away," she said. "At first, I thought I was imagining things. Every time you sent your parents money, Ethan seemed to have something new." She pointed to one section. "The year they told you they couldn't afford their property taxes." Attached beside it was a receipt for a luxury ski package. Another page. The month they claimed their furnace needed emergency repairs. Beside it sat invoices for airfare and hotel reservations connected to Ethan's vacation. Another. They asked you for extra money because they said your father's medications had become too expensive. The records beside that request showed payments toward Ethan's outdoor equipment and travel expenses. Grandma folded her hands. "I never wanted you to believe me just because I said so. I wanted you to have proof." I couldn't speak. For 10 years, I had believed every phone call, every apology, every promise that the money was temporary. I hadn't been supporting parents who were barely surviving. I had been financing the lifestyle of the son they had always chosen first. The realization hurt. But it wasn't the money that broke me. It was remembering myself lying in a hospital bed, recovering from emergency surgery, asking for one day of help with their grandson. After receiving more than $450,000 from me, they had still walked away. A few days after I was discharged, I invited my parents to my home. The caregiver was there with my son, while Grandma sat quietly beside me. My parents entered looking irritated rather than concerned. My father spoke first. "Have you come to your senses?" I slid the folder across the table. "Read it." My mother barely glanced at the papers. "We don't need paperwork. Families help each other." "They do," I replied evenly. "That's exactly why we're here." Dad pushed the folder away. "We did what we had to do." Grandma calmly opened the first page. "No," she said, "you did what you wanted to do." She began laying out the statements one by one. Monthly deposits from my account, payments for vacations, travel reservations, equipment purchases. The dates lined up so clearly that there was nothing to argue about. For a moment, neither of my parents said anything. Then my mother tried a different approach. We were helping Ethan get established. For 10 years, I asked. He needed support. I looked directly at her. So did your daughter. Neither of them answered. You accepted nearly $500,000 from me, I continued. Then you refused to watch your own grandson because you didn't want to interrupt a ski trip. The room fell silent. There was no explanation that could erase that fact. Over the next week, the family group chat came alive again. This time, Grandma shared the complete documentation with the relatives who had questioned what had happened. No insults. No accusations. Just records. One by one, relatives who had criticized me apologized. An aunt called and admitted she had believed my parents' version because she had never imagined they would hide the truth. My uncle simply said, "I'm sorry we didn't ask more questions." The conversation changed completely. Instead of asking why I had stopped helping my parents, people began asking how long I had been carrying the burden alone. I never restarted the payments. Working with my financial advisor, I permanently removed every automatic transfer. The same $3,800 that had left my account every month was redirected into 3 places: my emergency savings, my son's education fund, and my household budget while I recovered. For the first time in years, My financial plan revolved around my own family. The caregiver stayed with us until my doctor cleared me to lift my son again. She had stepped in when my own parents refused. I never forgot that. My parents felt the consequences almost immediately. Without the monthly deposits they had come to expect, they could no longer maintain the spending habits they had hidden behind claims of financial hardship. More importantly, their standing within the family changed. People stopped accepting their stories without question. Trust, once broken, proved difficult to rebuild. Grandma became a regular part of our lives. She visited often, held her great-grandson whenever she could, and never once made me feel guilty for choosing boundaries. Instead, she reminded me that protecting my child also meant protecting the future we were building together. Months later, I stood in my living room holding my son without pain for the first time since the surgery. He laughed as I lifted him into the air. The house was peaceful. There were no frantic phone calls demanding money. No guilt. No impossible choices. Looking at my son, I realized that the emergency surgery had done more than save my health. It had exposed the truth I had been paying not to see. The day my parents refused to protect my child became the day I finally chose to protect my own family instead.